nigga that you want on your team when you go to the bar and have a trivia night. Because I know the dumbest shit for the dumbest shit. I've been around so damn long, it's just part of my fucking culture. And I don't play when it comes to fucking trivia. I love trivia. This blunt's kicking.
Okay, so gentlemen, the name of this room is Ears, Ear. And I hope you use your ears.
Talking.
I hope you use your ears twice as much as you speak, because this is a meditation room. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Low IQ Dumb People talking about nothing, wasting their time.
Is able to say, in all humility, I am the Tao, the truth, the life. The teaching of the Tao Te Ching is moral in the deepest sense, unencumbered by any concept of sin. The master doesn't see evil as a force to resist, but simply as an opaqueness, a state of self-absorption, which is in disharmony with the universal process, so that, as with a dirty window, the light can't shine through. This freedom from moral categories allows him his great compassion for the wicked and the selfish. Thus, the master is available to all people and doesn't reject anyone. He is ready to use all situations and doesn't waste anything. This is called embodying the light. What is a good man but a bad man's teacher? What is a bad man but a good man's job? If you don't understand this, you will get lost. However intelligent you are, it is the great secret. The listener will notice that in the many passages where Lao Tzu describes the master, I've used the pronoun she at least as often as he. The Chinese language doesn't make this kind of distinction. In English we have to choose. But since we are all potentially the master, since the master is essentially us, I felt it would be untrue to present a male archetype, as other versions have ironically done. Ironically, because of all the great world religions, the teaching of Lao Tzu is by far the most female. Of course, you should feel free throughout the recording to substitute he for she, or vice versa. As to method, I worked from Paul Karas's literal version, which provides English equivalents, often very quaint ones, alongside each of the Chinese ideograms.
Struggling with debt? Take this quiz.
Are you wasting thousands of dollars paying off debts you don't?
What seems to me to be lacking in our Western religious observances is some sort of social ritual which gives an opportunity for spiritual experience. That is to say, for a transformation of the individual consciousness, so that in one way or another, the individual is able to realize his oneness with the eternal energy behind this universe, which some people call God, and others prefer not to name or to conceive. So what I'm proposing instead of the ordinary kind of religious service is, as I said, a contemplative ritual. And the idea is not to have everybody shaken up and whooping around, but to bring about a state of profound peace. So therefore I should say something in a preliminary way about meditation, or contemplation, as I prefer to call it. Meditation is the act of allowing one's thoughts to cease, the stopping the agitation of thinking. Thinking is talking to yourself. Now, if I talk all the time, I don't hear what anyone else has to say. Consequently, if I talk to myself all the time, I don't have anything to think about except thoughts. There is no interval between thoughts during which I can come into touch with reality, that is to say, the world which thoughts represent, as words represent events, or as money represents wealth. And so if I'm never silent in my head, I'm living in a world of total abstraction, divorced from reality altogether. Reality itself is neither mental nor spiritual, nor any concept that we can have of it. Reality is simply now. Therefore, to meditate, you might think that we attempt to suppress thought. We do not do that. Because you cannot meditate. Let me put that in a more emphatic way. You cannot meditate. You, your ego image, can only chatter. Because when it stops, it isn't there. When you are not thinking, you have no ego, because your ego is a concept. The thinker behind the thoughts, the feeler behind the feelings, and the thinker behind the thoughts is only a thought, an idea of some reference point to which all our experiences happen. And that, of course, cuts us off from what we experience. It makes a great gap or gulf between the knower and the known. And that creates the spirit of alienation to the world from which we suffer. Conflict, hate, domineering spirit arise from that basic division. So when you come to an end of thought, and you don't know how to meditate, you don't know what to do with your mind, nobody can tell you, then thinking comes to an end naturally. You can begin meditation. Or meditation happens, and that is, happening is the watching simply of what is. Of all the information to you conveyed by your exterior and interior senses, and of the thoughts that keep chattering on about it all. You don't try to stop those thoughts, you just let them run as if they were birds flying outside. And they will eventually get tired of themselves and stop.
Okay, I got this new very expensive book in. It's called Liber Aleph Vel CX1, The Book of Wisdom or Folly by Aleister Crowley. And I'm just going to record some 3-minute clips here. Some people say this is his best work and the most important work. And some say it's like one of the smartest books ever written. Table of Contents. Art of the Kabbalah, On the Corrected Life, Fables of Love, of the History of Love, a final thesis on love. So let's start on the Art of Kabbalah. I got this in another edition done by some like Indian printers on this like fucking bullshit ass big ass book with shitty printing, and this is it's about the same price, so kind of a waste of money to buy that other one, I think. But happy we have it. Okay, this is Kabbalistica de Arte. This is for YouTube. I hope you enjoy. De Arte Kabbalistica. Do thou study most constantly, my son, in the art of the Holy Kabbalah. Know that herein the relations between numbers, though they be mighty in power and prodigal of knowledge, are but lesser things, for the work is to reduce all other conceptions to these of number, because thus thou wilt lay bare the very structure of thy mind, whose rule is necessity rather than prejudice. Not until the universe is thus laid naked before thee canst thou truly anatomize it. The tendencies of thy mind lie deeper far than any thought, for they are the conditions and the laws of thought, and it is these that thou must bring to naught. This way is most sure, most sacred, and the enemies thereof most awful, most sublime. It is for the great souls to enter on this rigor and austerity. To them the gods themselves do homage, for it is the way of utmost purity. De vita corrigenda. Know, son, that the true principle of self-control is liberty. For we are born into a world which is in bondage to ideals. To them we are perforce fitted, even as his enemies to the bed of Procrustes. Each of us, as he groweth, learn repression of himself and his true will. It is a lie, this folly against self. These words are written in the book of the law. So therefore those passions in ourselves which we understand to be hindrances are nor art nor part of our true will, but diseased appetites manifest in us through false early training. Thus the tabus of savage tribes in such a matter as love constrain that true love which is born in us, and by this constraint come ills of body and mind. Either the force of repression carries it and creates neuroses and insanities, or the revolt against that force, breaking forth with violence, involves excesses and extravagances. All these things are disorders, and against nature. Now then learn of me the testimony of history and literature is a great scroll of learning, but the vellum of the scroll is of man's skin, and its ink of his heart's blood.
But don't worry about whether they know or don't. Just simply watch whatever it is that you are really thinking, experiencing, and that's it. Watch it. And don't go out of your way to put any names on it. That's really what meditation is. And you see, you're not expecting any result. You are in meditation in an eternal present. You're not doing it to improve yourself. You found out that your ego can't possibly improve you, because it's what's in need of improvement. Your ego can't let go of itself, because it is a complex called clinging to oneself. That's what it is by definition. So it's just something that evaporates when it is understood that it is unable to achieve a transformation of consciousness, mystical experience, the vivid sense of union of individual and cosmos. So, one of the easiest ways to enter into the state of meditation is therefore listening to what is, using the sense of sound. When you listen to sound, you listen to it, just the random sounds, that are going on in the room, in the street, as if you were listening to music, without trying to identify its source, name it, or put any label on it at all. Just enjoy whatever sound may be going on. Just listen. Now we can go on from that listening to making sound ourselves and also listening to it. And instead of making sound, we learn the knack of letting it happen through us. So then, we get to what is in India called the use of mantra. Words, sounds chanted, not for their meaning, but for their sound. And thus everything that will occur in the following celebration will not be in the English language. It is not intended to be understood in a discursive and intellectual sense. You are asked only to dig the sound. And I use the word dig advisedly because it means something a little more than appreciate. It means enter into, penetrate, get right to the bottom of. Because when you are listening to sound, and when you're letting sound hum through you, this is one of the most obvious manifestations of the energy of the universe. So, we concentrate, therefore, purely on the sound. And you will find some of them are so simple that you will all be able to join in with them. And please do so quite freely. It is a ritual, and it has a certain order to it. But it's very easy to get together. It doesn't require an enormous amount of dramatic rehearsal. And it's something that any group can do anywhere on a do-it-yourself basis anytime. And I suggest that churches get rid of
De arte Kabbalistica, do thou study most constantly, my son, in the art of the Holy Kabbalah. Know that herein the relations between numbers, though they be mighty in power and prodigal of knowledge, are but lesser things, for the work is to reduce all other conceptions to these of number, because thus thou wilt lay bare the very structure of thy mind, whose rule is necessity.
pews, where everybody is herded in like cattle to look at the backs of each other's necks, and that they spread their floor with rugs and cushions, and that they have something in which people can approach an ineffable, that means beyond words, spiritual experience, and not be told and forced into a particular pattern of thinking, of mentation. So you see, for that reason, I have only given the slightest suggestion of how one uses these mantra or the silence for meditation. You all have your own way of doing things like that. Do it your own way. All this is a vehicle, a support for contemplation. Listen. Close your eyes. Go entirely into a world of sound. If I should say anything to you during this silence, just listen to the sound of my voice. Don't worry about the meaning of the word. Your brain will take care of that by itself. air which is playing with your ears is also playing with your lungs. If you let your lungs breathe as they wish to, without helping them, watch what they do. When they feel like breathing out, they let it go out. They don't assist. When it feels like coming in, let it come in, but don't pull. Are you breathing? Or is it breathing you? Remember, there is no special state you are supposed to be in. Simply let yourself be aware of whatever state you are in. Don't name it. Just be. Now only is important. Now would you gently allow a sound to arise in your imagination, in the ear of the mind, the sound that is pleasing to you, and which you would feel natural humming. And letting your breath sort of fall out easily and naturally. Hum the sound out loud. Let it get louder. And louder.
Okay, this is more from Liber Aleph, the Book of Wisdom or Folly. This is Legenda de Amore. I'm creating a YouTube clip over here. Here we go. Legenda de Amore. The fault that is fatality in love, as in every other form of will, is impurity. It is not the spontaneity thereof which worketh woe, but some repression in the environment. In the fable of Adam and Eve is the great lesson taught by the masters of the Holy Kabbalah. For love were to them the eternal Eden, save for the repression signified by the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Thus the nature of love was perfect. It was their fall from that innocence which drove them from the garden. In the love of Romeo and Juliet was no flaw, but family feud, which imported nothing to that love, was its bane, and the rashness and violence of the revolt against that repression slew them. In the pure outrush of natural love in Desdemona, for Othello was no flaw,
You are supposed to be in.
but his love was marred by his consciousness of his age and his race, of the prejudices of his fellows, and of his own experience of woman frailty. Gesta de amore, now as literature overfloweth with the murders of love, so also doth history, and the lesson is ever the same. Thus the loves of Abelard and of Heloise were destroyed by the system of repression in which they chanced to move. Thus Beatrice was robbed of Dante by social artificialities, and Paolo slain on account of things external to his love of Francesca. Then per contra Martin Luther, being a giant of will, and also the 8th Henry of England as a mighty king, bent them to overturn the whole world, that they might have satisfaction of their loves.
And who shall follow them? For even now we find great churchmen, statesmen, princes, drama makers, and many lesser men overwhelmed utterly and ruined by the conflict between their passions and the society about them, wherein which party errs is no matter of moment for our thought, but the existence of that war is evidence of wrong done to nature. Ultima thesis de amore. Therefore, O my son, be thou wary, not bowing before the false idols and ideals, yet not flaming forth in fury against them, unless that be thy will. But in this matter be prudent and be silent, discerning subtly and with acumen the nature of the will.
Legenda de amore, the fault that is.
Lao Tzu puts it in this way: the great Tao flows everywhere.
Legenda de amore, the fault that is fatality in love, as in every other form of will, is impurity. It is not the spontaneity thereof which worketh woe, but some repression in the environment. In the fable of Adam and Eve is the great lesson taught by the masters of the holy Kabbalah. For love would to them the eternal Eden, save for the repression signified by the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Simply let yourself be aware of whatever state you are in. Don't name it. Just be.
Legenda de amore, the fault that is fatality in love, as in every other form of will, is impurity. It is not the spontaneity thereof which worketh woe, but some repression in the environment. In the fable of Adam and Eve is the great lesson taught by the masters of the holy Kabbalah. For love would to them the eternal Eden, save for the repression signified by the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Thus the nature of love was perfect. It was their fall from that innocence which drove them from the garden. In the love of Romeo and Juliet was no flaw. The family feud, which imported nothing to that love, was its bane, and the rashness and violence of the revolt against that repression slew them. In the pure outrush of natural love in Desdemona, for Othello was no flaw. But his love was marred by his consciousness of his age and his race, of the prejudices of his fellows, and of his own experience of woman frailty. Gesta de amore, now as literature overfloweth with the murders of love, so also doth history, and the lesson is ever the same. Thus the loves of Abelard and of Heloise were destroyed by the system of repression in which they chanced to move. Thus Beatrice was robbed of Dante by social artificialities, and Paolo slain on account of things external to his love of Francesca. Then per contra Martin Luther being a giant of will, and also the 8th Henry of England as a mighty king,
bent them to overturn the whole world that they might have satisfaction of their loves. And who shall follow them? For even now we find great churchmen, statesmen, princes, drama makers, and many lesser men overwhelmed utterly and ruined by the conflict between their passions and the society about them, wherein which party errs is no matter of moment for our thought, but the existence of that war is evidence of wrong done to nature. Also a thesis de amore. Therefore, O my son, be thou wary, not bowing before the false idols and ideals, yet not flaming forth in fury against them, unless that be thy will. But in this matter be prudent and be silent. Thus also is the man of calling. He disregards himself, and his self is increased. He gives himself away, and his self is preserved. Is it not thus, because he desires nothing as his own?
Left and to the right. It loves and nourishes all things, but does not lord it over them. And when merits are accomplished, it lays no claim to them.
Okay, this is 3 more minutes. Here we go. But in this matter be prudent and be silent, discerning subtly and with acumen the nature of the will within thee, so that thou mistaken not fear for chastity or anger for courage. And since the fetters are old and heavy, and thy limbs withered and distorted by reason of their compulsion, do thou, having broken them, walk gently for a little while until the ancient elasticity return, so that thou mayst walk, run, and leap naturally and with rejoicing. And since these fetters are as a bond almost universal, be instant to declare the law of liberty, and the full knowledge of all truth that appertaineth to this matter. For if in this only thou overcome, then shall all earth be free, taking its pleasure in sunlight, without fear or frenzy. Amen. De natura sua percipienda. Understand, O my son, in thy youth these words which some wise one, now nameless, spake of old. Except ye become as little children, ye shall in no wise enter into the kingdom of heaven. This is to say that thou must first comprehend thine original nature in every point, as it was before thou wast forced to bow before the gods of wood and stone that men have made, not comprehending the law of change and of evolution through variation, and the independent value of every living soul. Learn this also, that even the will to the great work may be misunderstood of men, for this work must proceed naturally and without overstress, as all true works. Right also is that word, that the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. But except thou be violent by virtue of thy true nature, how shalt thou take it? Be not as the ass in the lion's skin, but if thou be born ass, bear patiently thy burdens, and enjoy thy thistles. For an ass also, as in the fables of Apuleius and of Matthias, may come to glory in the path of his own virtue. Altera de via naturae, sayest thou, methinks that here is a great riddle.
since by reason of much repression thou hast lost the knowledge of thine original nature. My son, this is not so, for by a peculiar ordinance of heaven and a disposition occult within his mind, is every man protected from this loss of his own soul, until unless he be by corruption.
But in this matter be prudent and be silent, discerning subtly and with acumen the nature of the will within thee, so that thou mistake not fear for chastity or anger for courage. And since the fetters are old and heavy, and thy limbs withered and distorted by reason of their compulsion, do thou, having broken them all gently for a little while until the ancient elasticity return, so that thou mayst walk, run, and leap naturally and with rejoicing. And since these fetters are as a bond almost universal, be in the strong to declare the law, liberties, fetters, and the full knowledge of all truth, and appertaineth to this matter. For if in this only thou overcome, then shall all earth be free.
Therefore you
Take it.
relinquish power. Trust others. The more powerful you become, but in such a way that instead of having to lie awake nights, controlling everything, you do it beautifully by trusting the job to everyone else. And they carry it on for you. So you can go to sleep at night, trust your nervous system to wake you up in the morning. You can even tell it, I want to wake up at 6 o'clock, and it'll wake you up just like an alarm clock. This seems a sort of paradox to say this, but the principle of unity, of coming to a sense of oneness with the whole of the rest of the universe, is not to try to obtain power over the rest of the universe. That will only disturb it and antagonize it and make it seem less one with you than ever. The way to become one with the universe is to trust it as another, as you would another, and say, let's see what you're going to do. But in doing that, you see, in saying that to everything else that you have been taught to think is not you, you're also saying it to yourself. Because finally, as I pointed out, you do not know where your decisions come from. They pop up like hiccups. And when you make a decision, people have a great deal of anxiety about making decisions. There's this guy who, a farmer, who ordered a help man come in. And found he was an extraordinarily efficient worker, because the first day he put him on sawing logs.
But in this matter be prudent and be silent, discerning subtly and with acumen. But in this matter be prudent and be silent, discerning subtly and with acumen the nature of the will within thee, so that thou mistake not fear for chastity or anger for courage. And since the fetters are old and heavy and thy limbs withered and distorted by reason of their compulsion, do thou, having broken them, walk gently for a little while until the ancient elasticity return, so that thou mayst walk, run, and leap naturally and with rejoicing. And since these fetters are as a bond almost universal, be instant to declare the law, liberty, and the full knowledge of all truth that appertaineth to this matter. For if in this only thou overcome, then shall all earth be free, taking its pleasure in sunlight, without fear or frenzy. Amen. De natura sua percipienda. Understand, O my son, in thy youth these words which some wise one, no nameless, spake of old. Except ye become as little children, ye shall in no wise enter into the kingdom of heaven. This is to say that thou must first comprehend thine original nature in every point, as it was before thou wast forced to bow before the gods of wood and stone that men have made.
not comprehending the law of change and of evolution through variation and the independent value of every living soul.
A seeker concentrating on mindfulness advances like a fire, consuming the chains of bondage, both great and small, a monk or layperson rejoicing in mindfulness, seeing the danger of negligence, cannot fall backwards and is close to nirvana.
There's also that even the will to the great work may be misunderstood of men, for this work must proceed naturally and without overstress, as all true works.
But in this matter be prudent and be silent, discerning subtly and with acumen the nature of the will within thee, so that thou mistake not fear for chastity or anger for courage. And since the fetters are old and heavy and thy limbs withered and distorted by reason of their compulsion, do thou, having broken them, walk gently for a little while until the ancient elasticity return, so that thou mayst walk, run, and leap naturally and with rejoicing. And since these fetters are as a bond almost universal, be instant to declare the law of liberty and the full knowledge of all truth that appertaineth to this matter. For if in this only thou overcome, then shall all earth be free, taking its pleasure in sunlight, without fear or frenzy. Amen. De natura sua percipienda. Understand, O my son, in thy use these words which
You may
some
indeed
want,
believe
no
that the Bible is literally true, and that it was actually dictated by God to Moses and the prophets and the apostles.
the kingdom of
And that may be your opinion,
This
and
is
you
to
are
say that
limited
thou
on
must first comprehend thine original nature in every point, as it was before thou wast
The gender d'amore and the
before
fault
gods of wood and
that
stone
is
that
fate.
men have
Your
made.
things are really good. And think about it this way, neurodivergent characters, there's something very, very fantastic. Like a neurodivergent character is one that has a very large penis, and he has that because that's where his autism is stored. And I'll end it with that. Thank you all for coming today.
And he saw more love than anybody ever saw. It was fantastic. But they were all done in one day. The next day, we were mending fences. And there were all kinds of broken fences around the farm. In one day, he had the whole thing done. What am I going to do with this guy? So he took him down into a basement and said, look, you're all out of all.
Okay, this is more Aleister Crowley. Book of Wisdom Folly. Altera de via naturae, sayest thou, methinks that here is a great riddle, since by reason of much repression thou hast lost the knowledge of thine original nature? My son, this is not so, for by a peculiar ordinance of heaven, and a disposition occult within his mind, is every man protected from this loss of his own soul until and unless he be by coronson, disintegrated and dispersed beyond power of will to repair, as when the conflict within him, the rending and burning, hath made his mind utterly desert and his soul madness. Give ear attentively, the will is not lost, though it be buried beneath a life-old midden of repressions. For it persisteth vital within thee. Is it not the true motion of thine inmost being? And for all thy conscious striving cometh forth by night, and by stealth in dream and fantasy. Now it is naked and brilliant, now clothed in rich robes of symbol and hieroglyph, but alway travelleth it with thee upon thy path, ready to acquaint thee with thy true nature, if thou attend unto its word, its gesture, or its show of imagery.
quo modo natura sua est legenda. Deem not therefore that thy lightest fancy is witless. It is a word to thee, a prophecy, a sign or signal from thy Lord. Thy most unconscious acts are keys to the treasure chamber of thine own palace, which is the house of the Holy Ghost. Consider well thy conscious thoughts and acts, for they are under the dominion of thy will, and moved in accord with the operation of thy reason. This indeed is a necessary work, enabling thee to comprehend in what manner thou mayst adjust thyself to thine environment. Yet is this adaptation but defense for the most part, or at the best subterfuge and stratagem in the tactics of thy life, with but an accidental and subordinate relation to thy true will, whereof by consciousness and by reason thou mayst be ignorant.
Altera de via naturae, sayest thou, methinks that here is a great riddle, since by reason of
potatoes that come in from this harvest. And I want you to sort them into three groups. Those that we sell, those that we use for seeding, and those that we throw away. So he left it at that. At the end of the day, the laborer came back and said, well, that's enough, mister. I quit. Oh, he said, you can't quit. I've never had such an excellent worker. I'll raise your salary. I'll do anything to keep you around. I said, no. It's all right mending fences and chopping wood, but this potato business is decision after decision after decision after decision. So when we decide, we're always worrying, did I think this over long enough? Did I take enough data into consideration? And if you think it through, you find you never could take enough data into consideration. The data for a decision in any given situation is infinite. So what you do is, you go through the motions of thinking out what you will do about this. And then when the time comes to act, you make a snap judgment. I mean, I'm speaking a little extremely, making some fun of it, and so on, because after all, we do occasionally get the vague outlines.